the opportunity for me to spend time with MURAL, sharing some of Navigate's experiences with you guys today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are in the world. Greetings from Cape Town. So let's just quickly give you a bit of perspective about the nature of what we do. I'm the founding partner of my business Navigate. We founded it in 2011, a boutique management consultancy. I work with leaders and their teams to guide, drive, and support positive change. And in essence, what you'll notice there at the bottom, there are three very important ingredients. In fact, two. One is MURAL, and the second one is whatever communication platform our client chooses to use. MURAL specifically, I've been a partner collaborator since the middle of last year. I've been a supporter of MURAL for a very long time. In fact, from when MURAL was actually known as MURAL back in the day. Feels like a lifetime away, but in fact, since March 2020, much of my MURAL significance has ramped up to the extent that it has, and I'm sure that's the case with most of you, since the onset of our friend COVID-19. Before we getting started, let me just quickly mention that I know that Stefan wants me to talk, and Pete, about aha moments that are particular to clients, but I've obviously had lots of aha moments of my own. And one of those, maybe there's three, the top three right now is I use MURAL daily in terms of my collaboration work with my clients as well as my own work and in terms of presenting to clients proposals and so on. And for that, I use the outline. So you'll notice me using that outline here today. I think the other thing to mention is that I also make use of the content library. The content library is quite an amazing piece of functionality here. And if you haven't engaged the content library, it's a must-do after the session to understand how you can use it to develop templates. And the third thing I do use, which I'm going to put on now because I have a way of letting time escape me, is the timer. So I'm going to make use of our friendly MURAL timer here. So let me start it for 8 minutes and see if I can get it done in that time. Pete, if at any time you have anything to add or ask, please feel free to interject, and I'll make sure I cover it in for 10 minutes. So back to my MURAL client story. So our context here in South Africa, in Cape Town particularly, 28th of March 2020, at 1 minute past the hour, we are all, except for the essential workers, we are all remote workers. And it begins the most amazing science experiment I think the world has ever seen, and particularly for us here in South Africa and in Cape Town. Let's be honest, it's unprecedented times, and it's been difficult, not only for me, but also some of my clients. And in the past, all of my work was done on site or at client offsites. So I've really had to work quite hard. And I think to some extent, that's been a real enabler for me from a MURAL point of view, but I'll get into that. So my client is a company called Flow Communications. And Flow, not unlike any other organization, it's just that they decided to do something which no one else did, or hasn't at this stage called out. Flow, middle of April, were quite enjoying the remote work experience, so they decided to go full remote. But they hadn't really thought it through. And from the beginning of May, they had a few challenges. And one of the big challenges that they had was that, and as after having a conversation with them, I determined for them that their workplace culture in the past and the environment are inextricably linked. So if they're working remote, some of those things are going to flail, and over time they're going to subside. And we've got to figure out how we're going to work with that in the future going forward. Thankfully, though, there was an inspiration from a MURAL power player in the form of Explain. And I've been following Explain for a number of months, almost years now. And Elizabeth Hinckley of Explain introduced me to what they call their Future Work Environment and Culture Planner in a webinar entitled Growing a Thriving Workplace Virtually. The solution essentially is in three parts. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see their solution that they tabled, an individual solution that you might take individuals through. But in my context, my client was looking for something that they could use for their team. So inspired by this, I contacted Explain, and they graciously allowed me to use the IP. Very briefly, the Future Planner is nothing more than an historical overview, looking back at the history and asking people to respond to a set of questions, in that way capturing some data which allow us to then take some workspaces that we recall from the history forward, also considering the cultural artifacts of that workspace, to a here and now environment where we can now start to think about where we are currently executing the work that we are used to executing in our here and now workspaces, and with a view to planning for the future. And the future is essentially where we were headed with the client flow. They also forced me into a situation where I had to think a bit differently about the explain experience. One of the other ahas was the need for a set of unbiased, discrete, rich individual data. And in order to do that, rather than to try and do it in a mural session, I actually embarked on a process where I used a PDF captured document using the same template, but encouraged and invited my clients to essentially allow me to capture their data from a PDF document, which allowed us to get to the second session completely ready with all the data in the mural. So what did I do? I took the data, as you can see here, and I populated the template, each of the colors here, and that was one of the unique pieces of using Mural, was each of the data points here was related to a specific individual from the Exco team. This is Edwina's. And when you get into the work, you'll see how each of the colleagues' data shows up in the template. Let's get into the work. So here's the template, and the idea isn't to go into the detail today. If you're interested in any more, by all means, I'm happy to spend time sharing with you outside of this conversation. You can also hook up with Explain. Elizabeth Hinckley, I'm sure, will also share it with you. But what was relevant to this specific case is we used Mural in the way that we did to code in each of participants' data points. And as you can see here, Caroline was orange, Mercy was yellow. You can see her data appearing in the mural. I then used the session that I ran with them over 2 hours to theme up, to basically create affinity so that we could understand the spaces they used to utilize and the culture that was observed in those spaces. And the pink is essentially the central themes that emerged from the process that they would like to think about taking forward from their history. We then were able to look at the current here and now spaces. And when you look at this in the overview, the current here and now spaces on the mural were the carry forward spaces that they were wanting to consider. And this was quite exceptional in terms of the insight, because a lot of people were doing some pretty crazy stuff in their work from home environments, remote. From there, we were able to then allow them to have a first look, revised view of what the hybrid or full remote, but would look like a tend to be hybrid culture was going to look like. And for the first time, they were able to actually share together a plan and develop a plan for the future of how their future overview might look, which allowed us to then go back to this template. And I'm not going to show you their own plan, but suffice to say, it was a robust plan that they are now executing on. So from a case perspective, a great use case in my world for Mural. Closing comments from the client. The Future Environment and Culture Planner workshop, immensely valuable in helping them to map a way forward in a vastly changed business landscape, and nothing's changed for them. I think, in summary, the learning for this, they're really across 2 dimensions, the client ahas. We recognized, I noticed that clients loved to work with their pre-shared data in real time. It really created a sense of connection because the data was very, very deep. There was much greater engagement than in any physical intervention that I've run along the same lines using other analog tools. Participants really seemed to enjoy the asymmetrical nature of the process. And as you can imagine, they went away. I invited them into the mural in the second iteration, and that's when they started adding their data to the development of their plan, which I haven't shown you. But that was really where we got into the detail of using the tool with client. And lastly, once we'd concluded the plan, they were very excited with the fact that they had a full report readily accessible, and the link is available to them forever. So from their perspective, they really got a great outcome and a great work product. From my perspective, the impact of this on my work, the coronavirus and lockdown have forced me to change the way I work with clients. The real upside is now I can work with clients wherever I like across the planet. We've proven that very, very clearly, and Mural continues to prove that every single day. My core work's evolved, I think, to a hybrid model, and Mural will no doubt be the platform that holds it all together. And my last comment is to watch the power players that are out there within the Mural network. In fact, if you go and look at the schedule here on the inspiration, the power planners that I follow, Etch, Explain, Voltage Control, great operators, Luma as well. They can really give us some lessons. So from my perspective, for Mural, as my time runs out on my clock, thank you to Mural for providing the platform, Explain to the inspiration, and to all of you for listening to what I had to share here today.